But what if it was all a carefully constructed lie? What if the Virgin Queen, celebrated for her devotion to England, was hiding a secret so scandalous it could rewrite the history books? For centuries, whispers have echoed through her palace's rumors of secret affairs, of children hidden from view, and even a conspiracy so bizarre it questions the identity of the Queen herself. When you look closer at the evidence, it suggests Elizabeth's private life was far from the sterile image we've been sold. The truth could change everything. So, what was she really hiding behind the mask? For over 400 years, we've known her as Queen Elizabeth I, Gloriana, the Virgin Queen. She was an icon of power who ruled England for nearly half a century, steering her kingdom through treacherous political and religious storms. Her image is one of pure strength, a monarch who famously declared she had the heart and stomach of a king, a ruler who sacrificed her own happiness for the good of her nation. This story has become one of the most enduring legends in history, the making of a myth. To understand the secrets, you first have to understand the woman and the world that made her. Elizabeth's life began in chaos. She wasn't even 3 years old when her father, the infamous King Henry VIII, had her mother, Anne Boleyn, executed on trumped-up charges. In an instant, Elizabeth's world fell apart. She was declared illegitimate, stripped of her title as princess, and cast aside. It was a brutal, early lesson in just how fickle power could be, and it would shape her entire life. She learned from a terrifyingly young age that survival in the Tudor court was a high-stakes game. Her youth was a masterclass in navigating danger. At just 14, she was caught up in the political schemes of her uncle, Thomas Seymour, a scandal that nearly cost her everything. Later, during the reign of her devoutly Catholic half-sister, Bloody Mary, Elizabeth, a Protestant, lived under constant threat. She was even imprisoned in the Tower of London, the very place her mother died, with the possibility of execution hanging over her. These weren't just political challenges. They were deep, personal traumas that taught her to be cautious, calculating, and to trust almost no one. So when she finally took the throne in 1558, she wasn't some naive young woman. She was a survivor, and she understood the single greatest threat to her power: marriage. In the 16th century, a queen was expected to marry, produce an heir, and hand over a huge amount of authority to her husband. Elizabeth had watched her sister Mary's marriage to King Philip of Spain drag England into foreign wars and spark rebellion. She wasn't about to make the same mistake. Marrying a foreign prince meant subjecting England to a foreign master. Marrying an English nobleman would invite jealousy and chaos in her own court. Plus, any marriage came with the life-threatening dangers of childbirth. This is how the Virgin Queen was born. It wasn't about purity. It was a brilliant political strategy. By staying single, Elizabeth kept all the power for herself. She turned her eligibility into a diplomatic weapon, skillfully playing a long game with the princes of Europe. For decades, she dangled the possibility of marriage, keeping powerful nations like Spain and France hoping, and preventing them from uniting against her. She transformed her unmarried status into a symbol of her unique devotion to her kingdom. She was married, she claimed, to England. This powerful myth was her shield and her sword. But behind this fortress of virtue, the whispers began whispers that a woman with so much passion couldn't possibly live a life without love and without scandal. The whispers in the court. Robert Dudley. If one person could have shattered the myth of the Virgin Queen, it was Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. Their connection went back almost their entire lives. They were childhood friends, having known each other since Elizabeth was a young girl. They had even both been imprisoned in the Tower of London during Queen Mary's reign, a shared ordeal that forged a powerful bond between them. When Elizabeth became queen, one of her first acts was to make Dudley her master of the horse, a top job that ensured he was always by her side. The chemistry was electric, and everyone saw it. Dudley was handsome and charismatic, and Elizabeth was clearly captivated by him. Their intimacy was the talk of the court, and soon all of Europe. They were inseparable, and their easy affection fueled wild speculation. Ambassadors wrote home with scandalous reports, noting that Dudley's own bedchamber had been moved right next to the Queen's private apartments. The question wasn't if they were lovers, but when they would get married. But there was one huge problem. Robert Dudley was already married. His wife, Amy Robsart, lived quietly away from court, reportedly suffering from a malady in her breast. The court buzzed with the dark suggestion that the Queen and her favorite were just waiting for Amy to die. Then, in September 1560, the unthinkable happened. Amy Robsart was found dead at the bottom of a short flight of stairs with a broken neck. A coroner ruled it an accident, a misadventure. But nobody believed it. The scandal was massive. Had she fallen? Taken her own life? Or was she murdered to clear the way for Dudley to marry the Queen? The Spanish ambassador claimed that just months earlier, Dudley had confidently told someone he expected to be in a new position within a year. The scandal was a catastrophe. Whatever Elizabeth's true feelings were, marrying Dudley now was politically impossible. It would have confirmed the darkest rumors and could have even started a civil war. The man she loved, maybe her one true soulmate, was now tied to a suspicious death. She had to choose between her heart and her crown. As always, she chose the crown. Dudley hoped for years that she would change her mind, but she never did. Later in life, when Elizabeth thought she was dying from smallpox, she swore that nothing unseemly had ever passed between them. Historians still debate that oath. Was it the literal truth, or a queen protecting her legacy and the reputation of the man she loved? We'll probably never know for sure. There's no document, no letter, no conclusive proof they were ever physically lovers. But the affair with Robert Dudley, real or not, created the first and biggest crack in the pristine image of the Virgin Queen, leaving us with a tantalizing mystery. More than just favorites? While Robert Dudley was the great love of Elizabeth's life, he wasn't the only man to capture her attention and fuel the gossip mill. Elizabeth surrounded herself with handsome, ambitious men. Figures like the dashing explorer Sir Walter Raleigh and the courtier Sir Christopher Hatton all enjoyed the Queen's favor. But no one came as close to her heart in her later years, or caused as much trouble as Robert Devereux, the second Earl of Essex. Essex was Robert Dudley's stepson, a living link to Elizabeth's past. He was young, incredibly handsome, and had a fiery, passionate spirit. Elizabeth, now in her 50s and 60s, was clearly infatuated with him, a man more than 30 years her junior. He, in turn, played the part of the devoted admirer, showering her with flattery. But their relationship was a roller coaster. It was a tempestuous affair, marked by furious arguments and dramatic reconciliations. Essex was dangerously ambitious, and had a reckless pride that constantly clashed with the Queen's authority. He grew resentful when she didn't give him what he wanted, and their fights became legendary. In one infamous incident, he turned his back on her during a meeting, an act of stunning disrespect. Elizabeth reportedly slapped him and told him to go and be hanged. This toxic mix of affection and ambition was bound to end in disaster. After failing as a military commander in Ireland, Essex made a forbidden, arrogant return to court, setting himself on a collision course with the Queen. Feeling his power slipping away, he made a fatal mistake. In 1601, he tried to lead an uprising in London, a desperate bid to seize power and force the Queen to meet his demands. The rebellion was a pathetic failure. For Elizabeth, it was the ultimate betrayal. The young man she had doted on, treated almost like a son, had committed high treason. Despite her personal pain, her duty was clear. Robert Devereux, Earl of Essex, was tried and executed. The story of Essex is a stark reminder of how dangerous it was to get close to Queen Elizabeth. To be her favorite was to walk a tightrope, where one wrong move could lead to a fatal fall. These intense relationships gave plenty of ammunition to those who wanted to paint the queen as a woman ruled by passion. But in the end, her actions proved otherwise. Time and again, when forced to choose between personal feelings and the stability of her throne, the crown always won. Her heart may have been vulnerable, but her resolve as queen was made of steel. We've explored the men Elizabeth was closest to, the great loves and dangerous favorites that fueled a lifetime of rumors. But the whispers of secret lovers are just the beginning. The conspiracy surrounding Queen Elizabeth, the first spiral into territory so strange, it seems to belong to fiction. Before we dive into the most bizarre and persistent theory of all one that questions her very identity, if you're finding this dive into Tudor secrets fascinating, take a moment to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next historical investigation. The Bisley Boy, the ultimate conspiracy? If you think secret lovers are scandalous, that's nothing compared to the theory that Queen Elizabeth I wasn't a woman at all. This is the legend of the Bisley Boy, one of the strangest conspiracy theories in English history. The story existed for centuries as a piece of local folklore, but it was blasted into popular culture in the 19th century by none other than Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula. The story goes like this. In the 1540s, the young Princess Elizabeth was sent to a country manor in the village of Bisley to escape the plague. While there, she supposedly fell ill and died. Her governess and servants panicked. Her father, King Henry VIII, a man famous for his terrifying temper, was due to visit any day. Admitting they'd let the princess die on their watch was a death sentence. In desperation, they came up with a plan. Find a local girl to impersonate Elizabeth just until the king's visit was over. But they couldn't find any girls in the village who looked enough like the red-haired princess. They did, however, know a young boy from the village, a playmate of Elizabeth's, who had the right coloring. In a frantic gamble, they dressed the boy in Elizabeth's clothes and presented him to the king. The deception, as the legend goes, worked. The king didn't notice the swap, and the cover-up was so complete that it was never undone. The Bisley Boy would go on to live his life as Elizabeth, becoming one of England's greatest monarchs. People who buy into this theory point to what they call evidence. They argue it would explain why Elizabeth never married or had children. They point to her famous thick white makeup and wigs, suggesting she was hiding a 5 o'clock shadow or a receding hairline. Her famous speech before the Spanish Armada, where she proclaimed she had the heart and stomach of a king, is twisted into a literal confession. Some versions of the tale even claim a young girl's skeleton in Tudor-era clothing was found buried in a stone coffin at the manor in Bisley, proving it was the real Elizabeth. It's a fantastic story, but that's almost certainly all it is, a story. Pretty much every serious historian dismisses the Bisley Boy theory as complete fantasy. A princess, and later a queen, was never alone. She was constantly surrounded by ladies-in-waiting who dressed her, bathed her, and attended to her every need. The idea that a boy could have successfully pretended to be a woman for over 60 years without anyone noticing is just preposterous. We also have historical evidence that directly contradicts the theory. We know that during marriage negotiations, her health was a subject of intense international interest. Foreign ambassadors were so desperate for information, they even bribed her laundresses to get details about her menstrual cycle to report back to their own courts. This was way too big of a secret to keep. So, why has this wild theory stuck around? The answer probably has a lot to do with the deep-seated misogyny of the eras where it became popular. For some people, especially in the Victorian era, the idea of a woman ruling so powerfully and so independently was unbelievable. The Bisley Boy theory isn't a reflection of a historical secret. It's a reflection of a society that couldn't accept that a woman, on her own terms, could be one of the most brilliant monarchs in history. The real secrets of a spymaster queen. The scandals about Elizabeth's love life and the wild theories about her identity are fun to talk about, but they hide the truth. The real secrets of Elizabeth's reign weren't in her bedchamber. They were hidden in plain sight, woven into her government. Her greatest secret was her mastery of politics, propaganda, and especially espionage. Elizabeth's reign was dangerous. She was a Protestant queen in a largely Catholic Europe, facing constant threats from powers like Spain and plots from people who wanted to put her Catholic cousin, Mary, Queen of Scots, on the throne. To survive, Elizabeth needed more than an army. She needed information. She had to know what her enemies were planning before they could act. This is where Sir Francis Walsingham enters the story. Known as Elizabeth's spy master, Walsingham was a grim, ruthless, and incredibly effective operator. He built one of the most sophisticated intelligence networks in European history. His agents were everywhere, in the courts of France and Spain, inside Catholic seminaries, and among rebel nobles at home. They used ciphers, invisible ink, and informants to intercept letters, uncover plots, and stop threats against the Queen. The most famous success of Walsingham's network was exposing the Babington Plot in 1586, a plan to assassinate Elizabeth and install Mary, Queen of Scots, with Spanish help. Walsingham's agents intercepted the secret letters between Mary and the plotters, deciphered them, and gathered undeniable proof of Mary's involvement. This sealed her fate, giving Elizabeth the political cover she needed to execute her rival queen. This was the true secret of Elizabeth's power. It wasn't about gender or lovers. It was about control. She controlled her image with the masterful propaganda of the Virgin Queen cult. She controlled her court by playing factions against each other. And through Walsingham's spy network, she controlled information, staying one step ahead of anyone who wanted to bring her down. The intelligence gathered by her spies was key to defeating the Spanish Armada in 1588. Her secret weapon wasn't a hidden identity, but a hidden network that protected her kingdom from the shadows. So, did Queen Elizabeth I hide a royal secret? The answer is yes. But it wasn't the scandalous secret of a hidden child or a secret lover. There's just no real evidence for any of that. And it certainly wasn't the fantasy of a boy in a dress, a theory born from sexism, not facts. The true secret of Queen Elizabeth I was the secret of her own incredible success. It was the secret of how a woman, declared illegitimate and raised in the shadow of an executioner's axe, could take the throne of a broken nation and turn it into a world power. Her secret was her sharp intellect, her political genius, and her masterful use of propaganda and intelligence. The rumors about her personal life that fascinate us so much were just a side effect of her refusal to be what everyone expected. She was a woman who ruled in a man's world, and many people just couldn't comprehend it. Perhaps the greatest secret she ever kept was the sheer force of her own character, a strength and complexity that still captivates us today. And that's a secret far more interesting than any court gossip. What do you believe? Was Elizabeth's secret one of the heart or one of the mind? Let me know your theories in the comments below.